You are now tuned into Then Radio. If you enjoy our videos, we ask that you consider joining our Patreon to support our channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you never miss a new video. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and as always, thank you for watching.
Petri Wine brings you Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce in the new adventures of Sherlock Holmes. The Petri family, the family that took time to bring you good wine, invites you to listen to Dr. Watson tell us another exciting adventure he shared with his old friend, that master detective, Sherlock Holmes. You know, the lives of Holmes and Watson were not always filled with action. They spent many a quiet evening at home in Baker Street, discussing the problems of the world over a glass of port. You know, it seems that no wine is more expressive of friendship and hospitality than port. And I'm sure there's no port wine more enjoyable than Petri California port. Try a good glass of Petri port after dinner some evening, or any time you get together with your friends. You'll love the rich, ruby red color of that Petri port. You'll love its smoothness and full body, its remarkable and wonderful flavor, a flavor that comes straight from the heart of luscious, hand-picked grapes. Serve that Petri port alone, or serve it together with cake or cookies or with fruit. Yes, and serve it proudly. You can, because the name Petri is the proudest name in the history of American wines. And now I'm sure our old friend Dr. Watson's expecting us. Let's tap on his study door.
Come in.
Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, Mr. Bartell. Come over here by the fire. I was just having a cup of coffee. Would you care to join me?
Thanks, that'd be nice.
It'll prevent you falling asleep during my story tonight.
There's no chance of that, Doctor. From the hints you gave us last week, it sounded like quite a story. It began in a circus in Paris, you told us?
Yes, my boy, the circus. Colorful world of sawdust and spangles. A world, Mr. Bartell, that I may tell you confidentially, always held an irresistible fascination for me when I was a youngster.
Me too, Doctor.
In fact, when I was 8 years old, I fell desperately in love with a lady bareback rider. A stunning creature who wore pink silk tights with gold sequins on them. Unfortunately, my mother caught me writing her proposal of marriage, and I'm afraid that, that's another story, and one that you probably wouldn't find very interesting.
I'm sure I would, Doctor, but I think it would be safer to stick to your Sherlock Holmes story.
Yes, you're probably right, my boy. Well, it was a winter in the 1890s, and Holmes and I were in Paris. On our second day there, Holmes suggested we attend that night's performance of the Cirque Royale. Needless to remark, I was delighted, Mr. Bartell. And shortly after 9 o'clock that night, I found myself seated beside Holmes in a box near the ringside. It was an incredibly vivid scene, even for that city of color and light. The gay costumes of the women and the gaudy trappings of the ringmasters and clowns looked like a giant kaleidoscope under the blazing glare of the arc lamps. As we sat there, a brass band nearby blared forth some popular music of the day, and yet he didn't appear to be enjoying himself, and so I leaned across and touched his arm.
What is it, Watson?
Well, you're very quiet, Holmes. Aren't you having a good time?
A good time, I suppose, old chap. I was just wondering where Mr. Edwards is.
Mr. Edwards? Who's he?
An extremely distinguished client who was to meet us in this box at 9 o'clock.
Client. So this little excursion was on business after all. Yes, I might have known it.
Don't worry, old fellow. In your case, I think you'll be able to combine quite a little pleasure with the business.
Well, can't you be a little more explicit, Holmes?
Shh. Here comes the ringmaster.
Mesdames et messieurs, j'ai l'honneur de vous présenter ce soir la grande vedette du cirque, Mademoiselle Gisèle Girondet, équestrienne incomparable.
Giselle Gironde, yes, I've heard of her. She's a bareback rider, isn't she,
Honest in France, old fellow. She also has quite a reputation as a femme fatale. 3 duels have been fought over her. A young English officer in the Grenadier Guards committed suicide last year because of her. And a famous French banker is at present languishing in prison because her extravagances drove him to appropriate funds that did not belong to him. Yes, Watson, she's an extremely colorful personality.
You know, Holmes, it's a funny thing. When I was 8 years old, I fell violently in love with a lady bareback rider. She wore pink silk tights with golden sequins on them, but unfortunately...
Yes, she is, old fellow. Yes, she is.
Holmes, she's exquisite. Look at the way she's jumping from the back of one horse to the other. Sheer poetry of motion.
The lady appeals to you, Watson.
By George, yes, indeed she does. In fact, Holmes, I don't mind telling you that if I weren't a married man and a poor
you'd like
man...
to court the lady, eh?
Yes, I should
Excellent,
indeed.
old fellow, excellent. That's the very reason for our attendance at the
Well, what in
circus.
heaven's name are you talking about, Holmes?
Ah, there you are. Good evening, Mr. Edwards.
Holmes, my dear fellow, how are you? I haven't seen you since that little affair at Windsor Castle when Mother...
Excuse me, sir. I am Mr. Mycroft, and this is my friend, Sir William Nigel.
Sir William Nigel?
Oh, of course. And I am Mr. Edwards. We must respect each other's incognitos, eh? How do you do, Sir William?
Well, I'm extremely honored to meet you, Your Royal... Mr. Edwards.
How'd you like Giselle? Isn't she a stunning creature?
Yes, indeed she is, sir.
The four of us to have supper together after the performance tonight, I understand, Mr. Edwards.
Well, unfortunately, I can't be there, Mycroft. There's some stupid affair at the embassy which I have to attend. We must postpone the dinner until tomorrow night.
Oh, very well, sir.
Come over to my hotel a little early and we can discuss the whole business. Personally, I think a lot of fuss is being made about nothing. Now, if you'll excuse me, gentlemen, I must go back and see Giselle for a moment and tell her that I can't keep our appointment for tonight. I'll see you tomorrow, Mycroft. Good night, Sir William.
Good night. Good night,
good night, sir.
Et maintenant, pour votre plaisir, les frères Salini, les jongleurs internationaux.
Holmes, what's all this mystery? That wasn't Mr. Edwards. It was the Prince of...
Watson, please. Discretion, old fellow. Mr. Edwards, as you know, is extremely democratic. Too much so, possibly, when one considers his position and responsibilities. He's become quite seriously involved with Mademoiselle Giselle, the lady bareback rider who has just left the ring.
Oh, so that's it.
The Foreign Office, quite naturally, I suppose, is deeply concerned over the matter, and I've been entrusted with the delicate mission of protecting Mr. Edwards.
Oh, does Giselle Gironde know that his true identity, do you suppose?
That's the first thing that we have to find out. It's possible that she is simply captivated by having a rich Englishman at her feet. If, on the other hand, she knows who Mr. Edwards is, then we may be in for a great deal of trouble.
Yes, but how are you going to find that out?
By tempting her with a richer Englishman. And one with a title. That, my dear fellow, is why you are Sir William Nigel.
You mean that...
Your job, old
what?
fellow, is to do your utmost to steal Giselle Gironde from Mr. Edwards.
But, I don't even know the girl.
We shall remedy that defect in a few minutes. As soon as the performance is over, my dear chap, I shall take you to her dressing room and arrange an introduction.
I must say, Holmes, the backstage life at a circus is even more colorful than in the ring.
What makes you say that, old fellow?
Well, I just saw a pinhead having tea with a bearded lady while a sword swallower was standing behind him practicing his act.
Oh, hello. See that man standing talking to the girl in tights?
Yeah, attractive, isn't she?
The gentleman is Inspector Vernet of the French police, an old friend and a distant relative of mine. Vernet, how are you?
Ah, Holmes, mon cher ami, comment ça va?
No, Vernet, please. On this occasion, my name is Mycroft, if you don't mind, and this is my friend, Sir William Nigel.
How do you do, Inspector?
Enchanté, Sir William. Permit me to introduce Mademoiselle Yvette Marat.
How you do?
How do you do,
How
madame?
do you do?
What brings you behind the scenes at the circus, may I ask, mon cher Mycroft?
My friend Sir William is most anxious to make the acquaintance of Mademoiselle Gironde.
But of course, every man wishes to meet Giselle Gironde. Why not ask Vianney? He will present you to her. Ha! He knows her well.
Oh, now, Yvette, chérie, do not begin that all over again.
You're in love with her. You've always been in love with her. I wish you were dead. Sometimes I think I could kill her myself.
Upon my soul, Inspector, she's a fiery little thing, isn't she?
Ah, ça c'est vrai, ça, Sir William. Many times I've told her that Giselle Girondet would never waste her time with a simple police inspector. She prefers a wealthy foreigner. But Yvette, elle ne comprend pas. She does not understand and she does not believe.
Mademoiselle Marat was dressed in tights, Vernet. And what does she do in the circus?
She walks the tightrope.
Oh,
She's
yes,
queen of the high wire. Mm-hmm. A charming and a talented girl, but a most jealous one.
Vernet, my distinguished friend Sir William Nigel is most anxious to meet Giselle Girondet. Will you introduce him? I should prefer not to appear on the matter at this stage.
Oh, mais certainement. I will take you to her dressing room. Please come with me, Sir William.
Right. I'll see you later, Holmes.
I'll be waiting for you, old chap. Good luck.
You're a lucky man, Sir William. Giselle has quite a penchant for the Englishmen. And when they are rich and have a title, I am sure she finds them irresistible.
You really think so?
Oh, but of course. Ah, quel dommage that I am only a poor policeman. Here we are.
Entrez.
Giselle, mon chou, permit me to present to you Sir William Nigel. He's a great admirer of yours.
Yes, indeed, madam.
Ah, Sir William Nigel. Come and sit here beside me, Sir William.
I shall leave you. Au revoir.
Sit closer. There. That is much more cozy, no?
Oh, it's very nice of you to see me, Mademoiselle Gironde.
Oh, don't be so formal, my Englishman. You may call me Giselle, and I shall call you... Let me see, I shall call you... Sir William, Willie! I shall call you Willie. You do not mind?
Mine? I'm very delightful. Quite delightful, my dear. I was hoping perhaps that you'd care to have a little supper with me tonight, Giselle. So what about some oysters, a cold pheasant, and a bottle or two of Pomeranian Green 072? You get to taste rather well, don't you think?
Oh, Willie, I can see you are a perfect host.
I don't know about
One
that.
moment, I get my cloak.
Well, you know, Giselle, it's a funny thing.
What is a funny thing, Willie?
When I was 8 years old, I fell violently in love with a lady bareback rider at a circus. History seems to be repeating itself.
Here.
Alfieri, do you no longer knock when you come to my door?
Who is this man?
My name is Nigel, Sir William Nigel, my good man, and who may you be?
I am Alfio Alfieri.
I am Alfio Alfieri. And what is he? A trainer of wild animals. An imbecile. Va-t'en!
You must not speak to Alfio in that way. You belong to me. Send this stupid Englishman away.
Confounded impudence.
Grossier. Belong to you. Giselle belong to no one.
Do I have to take my whip to
Put
you?
down that way. Put it down, you scoundrel.
Next time it will be your face, cara
You
mia.
infernal blackguard. Raising your hand against a woman. Shocking.
Bravo! Monsieur Willie has knocked him down.
He certainly deserved it.
Oui. And you in turn deserve something, Willie.
Oh, what was that?
Come close, Willie, and I give it to you. A little kiss.
Oh, yes. Thanks awfully.
Oh, Willie, you are so strong, so resolute, so brave.
Oh, it was nothing, my dear Giselle. Nothing at all. Here, more champagne, gosh. More champagne.
Oh, Willie!
Giselle,
Oui, Monsieur Edwards?
have a box for the opera tomorrow night. I was hoping that
Oh, I'm
perhaps...
sorry, Monsieur, but my time is occupied. I am showing the delights of moment to mon cher Willie.
Mademoiselle est mieux le collier de perles à 5 rangs ou celui à 3 rangs?
He says, which do I prefer, the 5-string color pearls or the 3-string color pearls? What does my Willie think?
So that you can't hang too many pearls on a pretty neck like yours. I'll take the 5-string collar, my good fellow.
You're doing splendidly, Watson, splendidly.
Yes, but Holmes, I felt such a blasted fool handing that jeweler fellow a check signed by Sir William Nigel. Are you quite sure that it'll be honored?
Don't worry, old fellow. Remember who our client is. Money is the least important concern in this matter. On with the masquerade, old fellow. On with the masquerade.
More champagne, garçon.
Willie, you are such a headstrong boy.
More champagne. Citadel, you dear little thing!
Good evening, Vernet. Has Mademoiselle Girondet come in for the evening performance yet?
Yes, Monsieur Holmes. I escorted her to her dressing room half an hour ago. Monsieur Edwards is in there with her now. At last, it seems, she has use for a poor policeman. Last night, she found a threatening letter on her makeup table. Since then, she has been most grateful for my company.
A threatening letter, eh? Any idea who might have sent it?
Oh, yes, of course. I'm afraid I have, Monsieur Holmes. I told her to pay no attention. By the perfume of the notepaper, I recognized the sender. A jealous tightrope walker called Yvette Marat.
Oh.
Poor Yvette. She would make a very inferior criminal, I'm afraid. Still, Giselle asked me to stay outside her dressing room till the performance starts. You wish to see her?
Yes. Oh, good evening, Mr. Edwards.
Evening, Mycroft. Evening, Inspector Werner.
Comment ça va, Monsieur Edwards?
Look here, Mycroft. I think this little game's gone far enough. Giselle has just refused another invitation of mine. Now, I know who Sir William Nigel is, and I swear I'll tell her.
Don't you think, sir, that the lady is hardly worth bothering about? Surely this whole incident with Sir William proves that she's a scheming little adventuress. A fictitious title and an apparently bottomless purse have shown her up in her true colors.
I could have told you the same thing without such an experiment, my friend.
Well, I suppose you're right, Mycroft. I've been a fool. An idiot who lets a pretty ankle turn his head. A conceited dope.
Let us just say, monsieur, that you have been a man.
Good evening, sir.
Oh,
good
hello,
evening.
Watson.
Good evening.
Just going back to see Giselle for a moment, I brought us these flowers for her. Oh, I'll be back in a jiffy.
Just a minute, Watson. I hate to dampen your ardor, old chap, but the masquerade is ended.
Ended? What do you mean it's
It is no
ended?
longer necessary for you to impersonate Sir William Nigel or to pay court to Giselle.
Oh, really? Oh, really? Really? Well, that's a great relief, sir. Great relief. I've hated the whole business.
Oh, yes, I'm sure you have. We appreciate the sacrifices that you've made, don't we, Sir Edward?
Yes, indeed.
Well, I must go back and see her once more, though. We had a rendezvous for tonight, and I must cancel it. A gentlemanly thing to do, you know. I won't be a minute.
Never have I seen a man more downcast. Obviously, with him, my dear Holmes, business was a pleasure. Alfieri, where are you going?
That Englishman. I just saw him go into Giselle's
To
room.
whom are you referring?
That man that called himself Sir William Nigel.
Yes.
2 days ago, he struck me. I have to settle with him. No man may strike Alfieri.
Do not cause any more trouble, Alfieri. From what I've been told, you thoroughly deserved what happened to
Here he come now. You, English, you. Alfieri challenge you to a duel.
Holmes!
What, old chap? What is it? You're as white as a ghost.
It's Giselle.
What's wrong with her?
She's dead. She's lying there in her dressing room. Strangled.
you. Strangled. And only half an hour ago, I spoke with her myself. Since then, I've been standing in this corridor, guarding her door at her own request. Only 2 men have entered Giselle's dressing room since then. You, Monsieur Edwards, and you, Sir William Nigel.
What are you suggesting, Vernet?
I am suggesting nothing. I am stating that these 2 gentlemen are under arrest for suspicion of murder.
Dr. Watson's unusual story will continue in just a few seconds. Time I'd like to take to remind you that one wine that seems to be the outstanding favorite among the ladies is Petri California Muscatel. That's probably because, like a beautiful woman, Petri Muscatel is subtle and intriguing. Petri Muscatel is the color of burnished gold. And its flavor, well, it's the flavor of big, plump Muscat grapes, picked by hand carefully and tenderly, and they're just full of wonderful, delicious juice. If you want to show that you really know the wine that women prefer, serve Petri Muscatel. Serve it after dinner or later in the evening. It's wonderful. And why shouldn't it be? It's a Petri wine. Well, Dr. Watson, so you and the mysterious Mr. Edwards got yourselves arrested on suspicion of murder, huh?
Yes, Mr. Bartell. Holmes did everything in his power to persuade Inspector Vernet to release us, but it was useless. And so, while Mr. Edwards and myself were languishing in detention cells at the local Sûreté, Holmes and the French inspector were examining the dressing room of the dead woman.
I'm sure, Inspector Vernet, that being as keen a detective as you are, you must suspect the true identity of Mr. Edwards.
Of course, Monsieur Holmes. But that is the danger of incognitos. If he chooses to assume the identity of plain Monsieur Edwards, then he must run the risks of plain Monsieur
And
Edwards.
you're convinced that either he or my friend strangled Mademoiselle Girondet?
It is obvious.
Then I'll have to prove to you that they didn't. Let me examine the body again, will you? If she had been strangled by either of my friends, why would her body be lying here under the window? It's as far away from the door by which they left this room as possible.
That proves nothing.
No, but it's odd.
Giselle was a strong girl. There might easily have been a struggle. Perhaps she tried to get away through the window.
And yet there are no marks of violence on her throat. Just this piece of very fine cord that did its deadly work so cleanly. Cut with a knife.
Please do not remove the cord, Monsieur Holmes. The body has not yet been photographed.
Jeremy Vernet, you're making it very hard for me, aren't you? You notice, of course, that the window is open.
Yes, but we have examined the snow outside. There were no footprints within 3 yards of the window. The murderer must have entered by the door that I was watching.
Yes, it would be hard, even for a professional acrobat to jump in. An acrobat? Vernet, your young friend, Mademoiselle Yvette Marat, is a tightrope walker.
Yvette, but...
Yes, she certainly had a motive. She'd even sent a threatening letter. I heard her express hatred and jealousy for this dead woman. It's conceivable that she could enter a room by a window without leaving footprints in the snow. Where was she at the time of the murder?
I do not know. I was waiting for her in the corridor.
Then I suggest that we investigate her alibi at once. And after that, Inspector, I must pay a visit to the Sûreté. I don't want my friends to think that I've deserted them. Excuse me, sir.
Yes, Holmes.
I'm afraid it looks rather black. As I was telling you, Yvette Marat, the tightrope walker, was able to establish a completely satisfactory alibi. Vernet still suspects you or Dr. Watson.
Well, that's ridiculous.
May I ask you a very straightforward question, sir?
Of course.
I can well understand that if you had gone into the dressing room and found the woman already murdered, you might easily be tempted to conceal the fact, to avoid a scandal involving your person. Will you swear to me, sir, on your true identity, that Giselle was alive when you left her?
She was, Holmes. I swear it.
Thank you, sir. That's all I wanted to know.
Holmes, I'm glad to see you. You know, I've been thinking. All this depends on Vernet's evidence. But supposing he was the murderer. He told us that Giselle had turned him down, you know.
I'd thought of that, but Mr. Edwards swears that Giselle was alive when he left the room. And yet that means that Mr. Edwards... Oh, no. It's unthinkable.
Holmes, you're not suggesting. Holmes, if I thought that were possible, I'd confess to the murder myself. My life wouldn't matter if it'd save a scandal like that. Great Scott, it'd shatter the empire.
Dear old Watson, you shall not sacrifice yourself. You're as valuable a British institution as the Lion himself. No, my dear fellow. We shall never sacrifice you, not while my mind is still capable of... My mind? That's it. Thank you, Watson. You've given me the answer.
Holmes, what are you burbling about
Be patient,
now?
old fellow. In half an hour, you'll be out of this cell, and the real murderer will be in it.
Questions. Why must Alfieri answer so many questions?
Because he will not yet tell the truth. You murdered Giselle Girondet.
How many times I have to tell you I did not kill her? Why should I want to harm her?
Because you were jealous. Because she humiliated and tormented you.
But I was not in her dressing room. I've already proved that fact. Am I a magician that I can kill somebody without entering a room?
Alfieri, I know how you killed Giselle Girondet without its necessitating your entering this room.
And you're a smart man. Please to tell me.
I don't need to tell you. With the aid of Vernet, I'll show you. Open the window, Alfieri.
What game is this?
Very well, then. I'll open the window myself. Put your head out. Come on. So. Who do you see? Inspector Vernet standing 3 yards away, where you stood, and he's got your long training whip.
No!
Don't move! Stand there. The inspector hasn't your skill with a whip, but he wants to try a little experiment.
No, leave him alone!
All right, Vernet. I'm holding him.
Well, Mr. but I mean, well, sir, this is a pleasant change from a prison cell, isn't it?
It certainly is. Holmes, I can't tell you how grateful I am. I still don't quite understand how you did it.
Watson, in rather a roundabout way, was responsible for giving me the clue.
Oh, how was that, Holmes?
Well, on more than one occasion, old chap, I've had cause to deplore your rather florid style of writing. Tonight, I was very thankful for it. When I began to speak of the capabilities of my mind, suddenly I remembered a phrase of yours in which you referred to its whip-like rapidity and accuracy. That, of course, made me think of Alfieri, the animal trainer.
Exactly how did he kill the poor girl?
Well, sir, he stood outside the window, far enough away to leave no incriminating footprints. Called to Giselle, probably persuaded her to lean out, then snapped the whip around her neck, pulling it tight and strangling her.
And then I suppose he cut the cord and let the body fall back into the room.
Precisely, old fellow. We found a whipstock among his tackle, a whipstock from which the lash had been cut. The stub of lash left matched the cord around the dead girl's throat.
Amazing business. And I don't mind telling you, fellas, I'm very thankful to be through with it.
Yes, so am I, sir. In fact, I wouldn't be at all surprised if this whole incident cures me of my love of circuses.
Oh, I didn't know you had a predilection in that direction, Watson.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, if you don't mind my saying so. When he was 8 years old, he fell in love with a lady bareback rider. Didn't you, Watson?
Indeed. What happened?
Well, sir, I don't remember her name, but she wore pink silk tights with golden sequins on them. And I wrote her a rather hot-headed letter. Unfortunately, my mother...
Well, Doctor, that was one of the most unusual stories you've ever told. And I might say you played a very prominent part in that case yourself.
Oh, I suppose I did it. That, Mr. Bartell. Giselle was a beautiful girl. Beautiful.
Boy, I sure love that nickname she gave you. Wheelie.
Yes, I thought it rather nice myself. Well, that is, I mean...
Don't get embarrassed over a nickname, Doctor. You should hear the nickname I had. When I went to school, all the girls called me Bottles.
Bottles? Oh, I see, from Bartell. Bartell. Oh,
some nickname, like a prophecy.
What do you mean?
Well, they called me Bottles, and now that's what I like to talk about most. Bottles. Bottles of Petri wine.
Oh, I should have known.
And I'd like to talk about Petri wine because, as far as I'm concerned, it's the swellest wine that ever poured from a bottle. That's because the Petri family really knows how to make good wine. Well, they ought to. They've been making good wine ever since they started the Petri business way back in the 1800s. And since the Petri family has always personally owned and operated their business, they've been able to keep that fine art of winemaking right in the family, handing it on down from father to son, from generation to generation. So it's no wonder, whenever you want a good wine, you want a Petri wine, because Petri took time to bring you good wine. Well, Dr. Watson, what new Sherlock Holmes story are you going to tell us about next week?
Well, now, next week, Mr. Bartell, I'm going to tell you of a strange adventure that Holmes and I had in the swampy fenlands of Norfolk. It concerns a gypsy encampment, a child that vanished, and a horrible death in the murky depths of a fearsome quagmire.
Tonight's Sherlock Holmes adventure was written by Dennis Green and Anthony Boucher and was suggested by an incident in the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle story, The Adventure of the Three Students. Music is by Dean Fostler. Mr. Rathbone appears through the courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, and Mr. Bruce through the courtesy of Universal Pictures, where they are now starring in the Sherlock Holmes series. The Petri Wine Company of San Francisco, California, invites you to tune in again next week, same time, same station. Sherlock Holmes comes to you from our Hollywood studios. This is Harry Bartell saying goodnight for the Petri family.
This episode from the life of Sherlock Holmes will be transmitted to our men and women overseas by shortwave and through the worldwide facilities of the Armed Forces Radio Service. Petri Wine brings you Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce in the new adventures of Sherlock Holmes. The Petri family, the family that took time to bring you good wine, invite you to listen to Dr. Watson tell us about an exciting adventure he shared with his old friend, that master detective Sherlock Holmes. And say, while you're getting comfortable, I'd like to tell you about an old American custom. The custom of serving a glass of sherry wine before dinner. Petri, California sherry. You know, Petri sherry is to a good meal what the overture is to a good musical comedy or an opera. Before you sit down to the dinner table, just pour yourself a little glass of Petri sherry and sip it slowly. Look at that beautiful amber color. Smell the fragrance of those sun-ripened grapes. And taste that fine sherry flavor. You'll agree with me, I'm sure, that Petri sherry is the best beginning a good meal ever had. And say, if you happen to like your sherry dry, as I do, you'll really like Petri Pale Dry Sherry. Believe me, you can't go wrong with any wine that bears the name Petri, the proudest name in the history of American wines. And now let's drop in on the good Dr. Watson, who's waiting for us in his California ranch house. Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, Mr. Foreman. Come in and make yourself at home.
Thank you, Doctor. Sitting here with the lights off, I see. Have you been getting yourself in the mood for tonight's Sherlock Holmes story?
No, my boy, I was watching the sunset. It's quite a beautiful tonight.
Aye, Doctor, the sun set over an hour ago.
Yes, I know that, young fellow, my lad, I know that. But at my age, a fellow's entitled to take a little snooze after dinner, isn't he?
Of course he is, Doctor. And now that we've settled that, how about tonight's story?
Well, a very beautiful girl figured prominently in this adventure, Mr. Foreman. Her name was Jasmine Lafleur.
Huh? Can you say that again, Doctor, please?
I know, my boy, but that was her stage name. When she was a magician's assistant, unfortunately, I never had the opportunity of seeing Jasmine Lafleur in the theater. But I'm told that she was a fascinating figure in tights and spangles. When Holmes and I first met her, however, she was dressed a little more conventionally. And her name was then Diana Vennering. Lady Vennering.
Lady Vennering? Say, those tights and spangles really paid off, didn't they? Well, how did you and Sherlock Holmes come to meet up with her, Doctor?
In rather spectacular style, Mr. Foreman. Miss Lafleur became something of a femme fatale in the early 1900s. First of all, she married Signor Rossoni, the magician for whom she was working. On the wedding night, he was mysteriously stabbed to death. A few months later, Madame Rossoni, very fetching in her widow's weeds, I'm sure, met Sir Wilfrid Vennering. And, after a whirlwind courtship, she married him.
Don't tell me he got murdered, too.
He did, Mr. Foreman. Also on the night of the wedding. But this time, the police found a suspect. It was a certain Major Beckworth, cousin of the dead man, and an ardent suitor of the fair Diana. The trial at the Old Bailey was one of the most sensational I ever remember. Sherlock Holmes and I, in court on the closing day as a jury, were still considering their verdict. Holmes, the jury's been out over 8 hours. I bet you they can't agree on a verdict and there'll be a new trial.
I think not, old chap. Look, here they come now. You know, there's a strong moral probability of guilt, but I'm sure they'll agree that there's insufficient evidence to convict.
Oh, perhaps you're right. Just look at Lady Vennering down there ahead of us. What a stunning woman.
Yes, and a woman of great poise and courage.
Here it comes.
Gentlemen of the jury, have you arrived at a verdict?
We have, my lord.
How say you? You find the defendant guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Exactly. Come on, Watson. Let's get a breath of fresh air.
Well, I was wondering perhaps if we shouldn't go over and congratulate Lady Vennering.
On what? The fact that our husband's murderer has not been found?
Oh, I suppose you're right.
You ever read the Book of Tobit, Watson?
Tobit? I don't think so. When was it published?
Well, a little before our time, old chap. It's an Old Testament story.
Whatever made you think of it at this moment?
Well, it's so remarkably apposite with the case of Lady Vennering. It deals with a highly peculiar series of murders, 7 of them, if I remember correctly.
Who was the murderer?
A jealous demon by the name of Asmodeus, who strangled husbands on their wedding nights.
Well, judging by the verdict just now, Major Beckworth isn't the Asmodeus, or whatever you call him in this case.
Here, our boy, here. Give me a paper.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you. Paper!
Well, Holmes, what does it say?
Oh, wait a minute. Here we are. Listen to this. Lady Veneering, widow of the murdered man, says that she will marry the suspect. Lady Veneering told newspaper reporters this afternoon that if Major Beckworth is acquitted, she will marry him before the year is out.
Upon my soul, Holmes, there's a positive sparkle in your eyes. You read about her.
I must admit the lady fascinates me, old chap. I hope before she becomes involved in any further tragedies that we may have the opportunity of meeting her. And something tells me that we will.
Sunday papers are certainly having a field day over the Veneering case, Holmes. Did you read them?
No, I didn't, Watson.
There's a complete life history of Lady Veneering, and one of them with photographs. It's rather interesting.
Really?
What are you doing over there, Holmes?
Looking out of the window. Ah, yes.
You expecting anybody home?
No, come over here, old fellow.
Oh, it's a clergyman.
Yes, a very agitated one. Look at the way he's pacing up and down. And looking up at our window, too.
Joe, what eyes?
Yes, there's a fanatical look about him, which suggests either the martyr at the stake or the inquisitor lighting the faggots.
Mrs. Hudson's letting him in now. Well, I'll be interested to know what he's come to us about. I can hear footsteps on the stairs. Here, I'll go and have a look. How do you do, sir? Come along in, won't you? It's all right, thank you, Mrs. Hudson.
You're Mr. Sherlock Holmes?
I am, sir, and this is my colleague, Dr. Watson.
My name is Whalen, the Reverend Arthur Whalen.
How do you do, sir?
How do you do, sir?
Sit down, won't you, and tell me what I can do for you.
Thank you. Mr. Holmes, this is a very difficult subject to broach. In fact, it's only after intense personal conflict that I've been able to force myself to come to you. May I ask you, are you familiar with the Book of Tobit?
Book of Tobit? Gracious me. You were talking about that yesterday, Holmes.
I see that you've come to consult me about the Veneering case.
But that's amazing. How did you know? Has Lady Veneering been in touch with you?
No, sir, but I'm familiar with the Book of Tobit, and Lady Venering's case closely resembles that of the woman Sarah in the Old Testament story.
More closely than you realize, Mr. Holmes. Did you know that before each one of Lady Venering's husbands was killed, they received a threatening note?
Yes, I recall that from the trial.
Signed in some sort of gibberish, weren't they, sir?
No, Doctor. Yesterday I was permitted for the first time to examine one of these notes. The apparent gibberish was in reality ancient Hebrew writing.
Indeed. Were you able to translate it?
Yes, Mr. Holmes. In effect, it said, if you go through with this marriage, your hours are numbered. And it was signed Asmodeus.
Oh. The name of the jealous demon who strangled husbands in the Book of Tobit.
Exactly.
Just why have you come to me, sir?
I want you to talk to Diana, to Lady Veneering, to tell her she must not go through with this new marriage. Murder is stalking her, Mr. Holmes. I have argued with her, prayed with her, implored her to realize her danger. But she is adamant.
I'm afraid I should feel extremely presumptuous in giving her my advice.
No, Mr. Holmes. I have prepared the way for you. You could, I'm sure, make her realize her danger.
And she's willing to see me, you say?
Willing and anxious.
Oh, very well. But I'd like to ask you a few questions first.
Anything, Mr. Holmes.
What is your interest in her?
She's a member of my flock. She needs my guidance.
Nothing further?
No, Mr. Holmes.
By the way, I believe that you performed the marriage ceremony at both of her previous weddings.
Yes.
Are you proposing to officiate at the ceremony if she marries Major Beckworth?
Well, I don't know. I'm hoping that marriage will never take place. And so I want you to help me, Mr. Holmes.
Where does the lady live?
47, Berkeley Square.
Very well. Dr. Watson and I will call on her this afternoon.
Delighted to.
I doubt if I can be there myself. In fact, Diana might speak more freely if I'm not. But here's my card.
Oh, thank you.
You'll know where to get in touch with me if you want to.
Very well, sir.
Good day to you, gentlemen. And I'm greatly in your debt.
Good day, sir. Good day. Strange business, Holmes. I can't believe that Mr. Whalen's motives are entirely impersonal.
Nor can I, old chap.
What are you laughing about?
I was thinking of the Book of Tobit, Watson. In that, the role of protector, the role I have just been asked to take, was played by the Archangel Raphael. I can't help feeling, Watson, that I'm making distinct strides in my profession.
Mr. Sherlock Holmes. I'm so glad to meet you.
How do you do, Lady Vennering? May I introduce my old friend, Dr. Watson?
How are you, Dr. Watson?
I'm awfully glad to meet you, Lady Vennering.
Let's sit down, shall we? You're just in time for tea.
Thank you. You know why we're here, of course.
Oh, naturally. Mr. Whalen came round here as soon as he'd left you. You're to persuade me to look after my mortal affairs, while he takes care of my immortal ones. Isn't that it?
He takes care of well, that's charmingly put, Lady Vennering. Charming. He takes care of
May I say, Mr. Holmes, that I'm flattered that a man of your eminence should be sufficiently interested to bother about me.
You underestimate your own importance, Lady Vennering. Though I may mention that if your problem had been as simple as Mr. Whalen made it out to be, I might have been otherwise engaged.
You're being very frank and a little mysterious. Are you suggesting that Mr. Whalen didn't tell you everything?
I am. And I hope you will be more candid with me.
Sherlock Holmes, I like you. You're most refreshing. Milk and sugar in your tea?
Just milk, thank you.
Here you are. How about you, Dr. Watson?
Oh, just the same way, please. Hey, thank you, my dear.
And now, Mr. Holmes, perhaps you'll tell me why you think that you haven't been told everything.
Before I answer that, Lady Vennering, I wonder if I might ask you some questions.
But of course. Anything.
When your first husband, Signor Rossoni, was killed, did the police find any suspects?
Yes, one. Ferdinand Gautier, a young man who had been an assistant in our Magician's Act. A stupid, good-looking boy who thought he was in love with me. But of course Inspector Lestrade had to release him. There was no evidence.
Inspector Lestrade, well, you can bet that if he arrested him, the boy was innocent.
A warning note was found among your husband's effects, wasn't it?
Yes, and it was signed in Hebrew with the name Asmodeus. But perhaps you're not familiar with the Book of Tobit.
Oh, yes, sir, I am. I'm familiar with it, Lady Vennering. How did you know then that the Hebrew letters signified that name?
Mr. Whalen translated them for me.
Oh, I see.
And also read me the Book of Tobit. He's always been particularly fond of that book. Perhaps because it illustrates his own ideas on the dangers of marriage.
But Holmes, he told us that he hadn't seen one of the warning notes until yesterday.
Precisely. Lady Vennering, I read in the papers that you intend to marry Major Beckwith, the man who has just been tried for your late husband's murder.
Yes, Mr. Holmes.
When are you going to marry him, may I ask?
When it pleases me.
Doesn't it occur to you that a great deal of comment will be caused? Also that Major Beckwith's life is in obvious danger?
Of course it occurs to me, my dear man. But because of 2 tragic marriages, am I to spend the rest of my life alone? As Mr. Whalen would have me do? I'm young, alive. Peter, what are you doing here?
I just arrived back in England today, Diana. What's this I read about you marrying Beckwith?
Peter, I have guests. Mr. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. This is Peter McComas, one of our most promising young painters.
Diana, tell me it isn't true. When I left England, you loved me, and I you. I come back, and what do I find? You're planning to marry Beckwith. Well, I won't stand for it. If you think you can throw me over like some silly boy, you're very much mistaken. I can tell things, you know. I can tell lots of things.
Get out of here, Peter. Get out.
Diana.
And don't come back until you've learned manners and discretion.
But Diana...
Get out. I'm sorry, gentlemen. Were there any more questions you wanted to ask me, Mr. Holmes?
One, Lady Vennering. Where is your fiancé, Major Beckwith?
He's upstairs. I'm letting him stay here until the scandal of the trial has died down.
I must see him at once.
At once? Why, Holmes? He's in no danger until the marriage takes place?
The marriage has taken place, Watson, unless I'm very much mistaken.
What makes you think so, Mr. Holmes?
You're much too discreet and intelligent, Lady Vennering, to let him stay here in your house unless you were already married.
We were married this morning. But we planned to keep the fact a secret for a few months until the scandal had died down.
May I talk to him, please?
Of course. I'll ring for the butler and ask him to come down.
May I ask, madam, who married you?
The Reverend Arthur Whalen, of course.
Oh, and all the time he talked to us today, he knew perfectly well this marriage had taken place. He must have just come from it. I don't trust that man, Holmes.
Oh, there you are, Hudson. I just rang for you. Will you ask Major Beckwith?
Excuse me, milady. I was just on my way to telephone the police.
The police? What do you mean?
It's Major Beckwith, milady. He's been stabbed to death in his bath.
Major Beckwith murdered, too.
Hudson, I'll telephone the police. By now, I'm rather well acquainted with Inspector Lestrade. Excuse me, gentlemen.
A dreadful business, Holmes. A third husband murdered on his wedding day.
But what a woman, Watson. She's superb, magnificent.
What on earth do you mean, Holmes?
What courage. What unconquerable spirit in the face of a fresh tragedy. Watson, she fascinates me. I haven't seen such a splendid female since we solved that case for the King of Bohemia.
Dr. Watson's story will continue in just a few seconds. Time enough to remind you that the easiest way to make good food taste better is to serve that good food with a swell Petri wine. And there are two Petri wines in particular just made to go with food. Petri California Sauterne, a delicate white wine with a subtle flavor that's perfect with chicken and fish. And Petri California Burgundy, a hearty, rich red wine that's out of this world with any meat or meat dish. So if you want to know just how good a cook you are, serve your good food with Petri wine made to go with it. A Petri Burgundy or a Petri Sauterne. Two swell Petri mealtime wines. And now back to tonight's new Sherlock Holmes adventure. The famous detective and his old friend Dr. Watson have become involved in the affairs of thrice-married Diana, one-time magician's assistant. Each of her husbands has been mysteriously murdered on his wedding day, the latest murder occurring on the same day that Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson are brought into the case. As we rejoin our story, it's a month later, and for some obscure reason, Sherlock Holmes seems to have lost interest in the case, though not in the beautiful Diana.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes, Lestrade?
It's over a month now since Major Beckwith was murdered, and we haven't found a single clue to work on.
Do you expect me to supply the deficiencies of Scotland Yard?
Well, it's unlike you not to help us, Mr. Holmes. And after all, you and Dr. Watson were in the house when it happened. If you ask me, the murderer's either McComas, that Irish painter, or the clergyman Whalen. What do you think, sir?
As far as I'm concerned, the case is closed, Lestrade, and I wish you'd stop bothering me. What do you think I am? Nothing but a detecting machine?
Mr. Holmes, whatever's come over you?
Holmes, you're not going out again this evening, are you?
I'm afraid so, old chap.
Well, this will be the fourth night in a row. I was hoping that we might have a nice, quiet evening in front of the fire.
Oh, I'm sorry, Watson, but I promised to take Diana to the horse show at Olympia. I should be home by midnight.
Mr. Holmes.
Yes, Mr. Whalen?
You're seeing altogether too much of Diana. She seems to be completely under your spell.
But you introduced me to her in the first place with the request that I keep an eye on her.
I made a great mistake. As her spiritual protector, I'm afraid I must ask you to stop seeing her.
I'm afraid I must ask you, sir, to mind your own business.
I say, Holmes, have you seen in the paper that violinist, this Iway, is playing at the Albert Hall tonight?
No, I haven't looked at the paper today.
Oh, I thought perhaps that we might go along and see
I'm
together.
afraid I can't, old chap. No, I'm taking Diana to the French Maid at Delius Theatre. I hear it's a charming musical comedy.
Look here, Holmes. We've been friends for a good many years now.
Very true, old fellow.
And I think I'm entitled to speak to you straight from the shoulder.
Of course you are, Watson.
Very well, then. This Diana Beckwith.
Oh.
Well, yes, it's your own business, I suppose, but I can't bear to see her making such a fool of you. You've neglected your work entirely since you met her. You get about as though you're a young fellow 20. What's come over you, Holmes?
Stop pacing about, old chap, will you, and sit down. In fact, it might be a good idea if you fortified yourself with a nip of brandy from the Tantalus there. What I'm about to tell you may be something of a shock. Watson, Diana and I are getting married tomorrow.
What did you say, Holmes?
I'm getting married tomorrow.
But, you're insane.
Oh, that's not very flattering, Watson. Anyway, I don't see why you should be so surprised. You You yourself married and left Baker Street once, didn't you?
You, Holmes, a confirmed woman hater.
No, my dear Watson. No, indeed, no. You will remember in our adventure that you titled A Scandal in Bohemia, I met a lady that I have often referred to as the woman.
You mean Irene Adler, but she was a criminal.
Exactly, and yet Diana has the same magnificent characteristics. Keen intelligence, courage, and unconquerable spirit.
But Holmes, 3 of her husbands murdered on their wedding nights. You're proposing to be the 4th.
Oh, rubbish, my dear fellow, because tragedy has attended her previous marriages. Is she to go through life alone?
Holmes, you really mean it, don't you?
Of course I do.
I think I will have a nip of brandy.
Oh, don't take it so badly, old fellow. We'll continue to see a lot of each other. Diana's very fond of you, you know.
Oh, well, I'm glad. Who's going to perform the ceremony? Not the Reverend Mr. Whalen?
Oh, no. We decided, in view of Diana's previous marriages, that he might prove to be a trifle, unlucky. A clergyman named Vernet will officiate. Whalen, of course, insists on being present just the same.
What time is the wedding tomorrow?
2 o'clock, old fellow. Oh, I should have mentioned this before. I hope your cutaway coat and top hat are in a good state of preservation. You'll be a pretty prominent figure at the ceremony, you know.
You mean that...
Well, I mean that if Sherlock Holmes gets married, who else can be his best man but his old friend, Dr. Watson? It's elementary, my dear fellow, elementary.
I now pronounce you man and wife, and those whom God hath joined together, let no man put asunder.
Diana, I'm going to claim the privilege of the best man and give you a kiss.
Of course you shall, Doctor.
By Jove, Holmes, you're a devilish lucky fellow.
Of course I am, old chap.
Sherlock, I'm going upstairs to change my dress now.
Very well, Diana. I'll be up shortly.
I'll see you later, Dr. Watson.
Very well, Mrs. Holmes. Holmes, I never thought I'd live to say that.
Watson, old fellow, I'm worried.
Worried today? Oh, my dear fellow, what's the matter?
Well, just before the ceremony, I received one of those warning notes signed by Asmodeus.
Oh, you better be careful, Holmes.
I think I'll slip out and have a pipe or 2 on the matter. Yes. Look after my guests for me, will you? And keep your eyes open. And your ears.
Yes, I will indeed. There you are, Mr. Whalen. Would you care for a glass of champagne or punch or something or other?
Thank you, no, Doctor. I'm in no mood for celebration. I'm certain that Diana has made a shocking mistake.
Well, really, sir, I don't think...
I only came here in a last-minute attempt to dissuade her. Now that I've failed, I shall leave. Good day, sir.
Bless your soul.
Dr. Watson?
Oh, hello, McComas.
Where's Mr. Holmes?
We'll be back in a few minutes. Would you care for a glass of champagne, sir?
Well, thank you. I should like to drink a toast to the pair. I've been in love with Diana for years, you know, but she wouldn't marry me, and I suppose I might as well make the best of it. I must say your friend Sherlock Holmes seems like a splendid fellow.
He is indeed, McComas. In fact, I may say... Excuse me, sir. All right, Holmes, I'm coming.
Up here.
What else the matter, Holmes?
Follow me. Lock the door behind you. Allow me to introduce you to the demon Asmodeus, Watson. Unfortunately, at the moment, she's in a faint.
Good Lord.
It's Diana. Exactly. Always an impetuous woman, she made the mistake of trying to stab me with that knife. So I bent over to strap up a suitcase. She didn't allow for the wall mirror in which I was watching her.
You mean you suspected her all along?
Of course I did, old fellow. The problem was to find the proof. I first suspected her when I knew that she had been a magician's assistant. The key to the profession of magic is misdirection, and these murders have been a perfect example of misdirection of motive.
How do you mean, Holmes?
Well, by creating Asmodeus, thanks to the well-meaning stories of the Reverend Mr. Whalen, from whose theological libraries she must have copied the Hebrew signature, she focused the murders on jealousy, concealing the fact that the one person with a perfect motive was herself, the widow who was to inherit.
Oh, why hasn't she been caught before?
Because she was clever, devilishly clever. She left no clues except an indirect one that I had once spotted, that the likeliest person to be able to approach a bridegroom unsuspected and stab him is his bride. And now I wish you'd see if you can revive her, old fellow. When the police get here, I should like Mrs. Holmes to be in full possession of all her faculties.
Well, Holmes, I must say I never expected to be driving back with you to Baker Street on your wedding day. I can't tell you how happy I feel.
Dear old Watson, you really thought that I deserted you, didn't you?
Oh, naturally. I wish you'd told me the truth.
Well, I couldn't tell anyone, not even you. If the faintest shadow of suspicion had entered her mind, I'd never have caught her.
Well, it seems to me you paid a pretty high price, Holmes. You told me you made a will in her favor. Supposing something happens to you before her trial, she'd get the money, you know.
Oh, the will? Oh, no, that was worthless. I told Diana that it was a holographic will and perfectly valid.
Well, what on earth is a holographic will?
A will drawn up in one's own handwriting on a piece of perfectly plain paper. Such a document is quite legal, but I drew mine up on a paper with a letterhead. That made it invalid.
Well, I see, but the fact remains that you are married, Holmes.
I really fooled you completely, didn't I, Watson? Didn't the name of the clergyman who married us suggest anything to you?
The Reverend Vernet? No, and why not should it?
Well, Vernet was a French painter of some note. He also happens to have been a great uncle of mine and Mycroft's.
You mean that your brother Mycroft was a clergyman?
I mean that Mycroft was disguised as a clergyman. And a very convincing job he did, too. A more satisfactory clergyman than the Reverend Mr. Whalen, no doubt, whose possible complicity may compel him to answer some very awkward questions.
Then you're not married. Upon my soul, Holmes, I don't know what to say.
Then I suggest that you say nothing, my dear chap. Let's just sit back quietly, as two good friends can, and brood about the mutability of human affairs.
Well, Doctor, tonight's adventure was really a little extraordinary, to say the least. Holmes sure had a narrow escape.
Doubly narrow, Mr. Foreman, doubly narrow. He not only escaped the jaws of death, but he also escaped the clutches of matrimony. Actually, the story had a happy ending for everybody but Lady Vennering. Jasmine Lafleur.
Well, what about that artist fellow, McComas? How did he take it?
Oh, very well indeed. In fact, in gratitude, he even painted Holmes's portrait. Not exactly a good likeness, though. One of those modern artists who paints as impressions of a person rather than a portrait.
What do you mean?
Well, now, let me see. If he were to paint his impression of you, you'd probably end up by looking like a bottle of Petri wine in a sports jacket.
Go ahead, Doctor. You can tease me all you want to, but I'll still rave about Petri wine. And why not? The facts bear me out that Petri wine most certainly is good wine. After all, the Petri family knows all there is to know about the art of turning plump, sun-ripened grapes into fragrant, delicious wine. That's because they've been making wine for generations, ever since they started the Petri business way back in the 1800s. And because the making of Petri wine is a family affair, the family has been able to hand down from father to son, all their skill and knowledge and experience. And believe me, that adds up to plenty. So no matter what type of wine you prefer, one to serve with meals or a wine for any special occasion, choose one of the fine Petri wines. You can't miss, because Petri took time to bring you good wine. And now, Dr. Watson, what story do you have lined up for us next week?
Well, now, let me see, Mr. Foreman. I'm going to tell you about a strange adventure that began by my taking a wild cab ride through the moonlit streets of London and ended with Holmes and me being trapped in a luxuriously furnished cellar below a furniture warehouse down by the waterfront.
Tonight's Sherlock Holmes adventure is written by Dennis Green and Anthony Boucher and is based on an incident in the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle story, The Adventure of Shoscombe Old Place. Mr. Rathbone appears through the courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and Mr. Bruce through the courtesy of Universal Pictures, where they are now starring in the Sherlock Holmes series. The Petri Wine Company of San Francisco, California, invites you to tune in again next week, same time, same station.
Oh, the Petri family took the time to bring you such good wine. So when you eat and when you cook, remember Petri wine.
To make good food taste better, remember...
Petri wine.
This is Bill Foreman saying goodnight for the Petri family. Sherlock Holmes comes to you from our Hollywood studios. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System. This episode from the life of Sherlock Holmes will be transmitted to our men and women overseas by shortwave and through the worldwide facilities of the Armed Forces Radio Service. Petri Wine brings you Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce in the new adventures of Sherlock Holmes. The Petri family, the family that took time to bring you good wine, invite you to listen to Dr. Watson tell about another exciting adventure he shared with that master detective, his old friend Sherlock Holmes. And say, I want to tell you about a little present I've got for you. A present, and it's free. It's a swell recipe calendar printed in full color, and it's good for 2 years, 1945 and 46. But best of all, this calendar not only gives you the dates, it gives you loads of swell recipes and ideas for cooking with Petri wine. Want to know how to make spare ribs that are out of this world? You want to learn a new way to fix liver and onions, a swell way to make soup more delicious than ever. It's a cinch with this calendar handy in your kitchen to tell you how. In fact, this calendar tells you all you ought to know about wine. And remember, it's free. Just write to Petri Wine, Petri, Petri Wine, San Francisco 26, California. Petri Wine, San Francisco 26, California. We'll send you your swell recipe calendar immediately. And now for our weekly visit with the genial Dr. Watson. Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, Mr. Foreman. Come in and settle yourself down.
Thank you. You're looking particularly comfortable tonight, Doctor. Feet up on the sofa and the puppies asleep on your lap.
Yes, my boy. The three of us went for a long walk on the beach this afternoon. And Monty and Winnie had a running battle with the seagulls. In consequence, they've been fast asleep ever since we got home.
Well, I hope you're not too tired, Doctor. I'm counting on a new Sherlock Holmes story, you know.
No. I'm all ready for you, Mr. Foreman. In fact, I was going through my notes on the case just before you arrived.
Well, last week you told us it concerned a strange society who held their meetings in an underground vault of a furniture warehouse.
Yeah, that's right, my boy. Now, down, Winnie. Get down, Monty. No. Down. The story really began one stormy November night in 1887. I was married at the time and living away from Baker Street. On this night in question, my wife had already gone to bed, and I was nodding in front of the fire over one of Clark Russell's fine sea stories. I'd had a very tiring day, I remember. It was about the hour that a man gives his first yawn and glances at the clock. When suddenly, my front doorbell jangled discordantly. Oh, our servant Edna had gone up to bed, so I crossed to the window and opened it. It was very dark, but I could just see the outline of a figure standing on my doorstep. It looked like a woman. Suddenly, a cultivated voice called up to me.
Is the doctor in?
Yes, madam. I'm the doctor.
Then please come at once. It's a matter of life and death. I have a carriage waiting.
Gracious me. All right. I'll be down immediately. I closed the window, scribbled a note to my wife, grabbed my coat and hat and my bag, and a few minutes later I stepped out of the front door and closed it behind me. The carriage was standing at the curb, but I couldn't see any trace of the lady who'd called me. The only person in sight was an old and repulsive-looking beggar woman, dressed in rags and tatters. After a moment of bewilderment, I spoke. My good woman, did you see a lady leave here a moment ago?
No, doctor, she didn't leave. She's still waiting for you.
Forgive me, madam, but clothes of yours, I thought you were a beggar woman.
There isn't any time to discuss that now. Please get in this carriage.
But where's the driver?
I'm going to drive. Please get in.
Very well. It's only business. Are you sure that you can handle those horses, madam?
Of course I can.
You should tell me the way you're driving, ma'am.
Please don't ask me any more questions, doctor. You'll find out soon enough.
Thank heavens we've finally reached our destination. Must have driven halfway across London. Hello. Must be somewhere down near the river. No dwelling places here. Nothing but enormous warehouses. Why have we stopped here, madam?
Well, this Where we're going. Please follow me down these steps.
I wish you'd tell me where you're taking me.
We have a club here in the basement. You'll see for yourself in a moment.
It's a very solid-looking door. How do you propose to get past it?
I'll show you.
Lord, it must be a very secret club of yours, madam.
It is, Doctor.
Who knocks?
Number 7.
Give the password.
To the lanterns.
You may enter.
Follow me, Doctor.
Madam, I do wish you'd tell me where you're taking me. This looks like the entrance to an opium den or a thieves' kitchen.
Don't worry, Doctor. You're in no danger. There. Does that look like a thieves' kitchen?
Great Scott, I don't believe my eyes. A luxuriously furnished room. What a strange collection of people. Some look like beggars, others in full evening dress. Amazing.
Number 7. Who is this man?
He's a doctor. I went to fetch him.
I thought I said there were to be no strangers inside.
Now look here, my good man. I've been extremely patient, but my temper's beginning to wear a little thin. Either let me see your patient at once or show me out. My time's valuable and I don't propose to waste it.
I'm sorry, Doctor. Where is Julian?
He's in the back room. And if you know what's good for you, Doctor, whatever you call yourself, you'll forget everything you see in here.
Stop threatening me, sir. I'm not in the least interested in your blasted club. Just take me to the patient.
This is the man we want you to examine, Doctor.
Huh? What happened?
He fell down the stairs leading into the clubroom.
Well, why'd you move him?
We wanted him to be comfortable.
That's the worst thing in the world you could have done. Never move a person with an injured skull.
Is he going to be all right, Doctor?
No, madam, I'm afraid he isn't. His neck's broken. He's dead.
Huh?
Julian, dead.
You sure of that, Doctor?
Of course I'm sure of it, my good man. I'm afraid you need an undertaker, not a doctor.
We must tell the others. All right, quiet, everybody. Quiet. Quiet. Julian is dead.
Julian dead? Oh, this is terrible. Who is this man?
He's a doctor.
Oh, better get him out of here at once. We don't want any strangers nosing about.
That's right, though. Shouldn't have brought him here anyway.
Now, just a minute. I assure you, ladies and gentlemen, I haven't the slightest desire to stay here one moment longer. If you'll direct me to the door again, madam, I'll try to find a cab myself in this godforsaken district and go home.
Show him out and give him his money.
Follow me, please.
I'm delighted to.
Do you mind if I don't drive you home, Doctor?
Well, no, I should prefer it. My nerves aren't in the best of shape.
You mustn't be angry with me, Doctor, please.
Leaving again, number 7.
No, but this gentleman is. Will you see if you can find a cab for him?
Right.
To whom shall I send in my bill, madam?
Oh, here's a £5 note. That should cover your time and trouble, shouldn't it?
No, it's far too much, madam.
No, Doctor, it's late at night, and it hasn't been a very pleasant case for you. Please take it.
Oh, it's very kind of you, very generous indeed. But by the way, how did you happen to come to me in the first place?
I was driving about looking for a doctor, and a policeman directed me to your house.
Oh, I see.
I have found a cab for you.
Thank you, my man, thank you.
Oh, Doctor, may I come round in the morning for a death certificate?
Of course. You remember my address?
Yes, but I don't know your name.
Watson. Dr. Watson.
Dr. Watson? Not the Dr. Watson who's associated with Sherlock Holmes.
Right, madam, I'm flattered that you know of me.
Good night, Doctor. And please forget about everything you've seen here tonight.
My soul, what an amazing business. Holmes will be interested to hear about this. And that's the way it was, Holmes. One of the most curious adventures I ever had without you.
Very interesting, Watson. You say this underground cellar was luxuriously furnished.
Yes, and the people there were an amazing mixture. Some were in rags and some in evening dress.
Huh, like the nursery rhyme, eh? Some in rags and some in tags and some in velvet gowns.
Exactly. In the feeling that I was taking part in a story out of the Arabian Nights. I must say, though, I was pretty angry at the time. However, after a good night's rest, I feel quite differently this morning. I thought I'd just drop round and tell you all about it.
I'm glad you did, my dear fellow. It would be interesting to see if any repercussions of your strange adventure reach us.
Oh, I doubt it. The woman seemed frightened to death when I mentioned your name.
We shall see. Meanwhile, I'm expecting a client. You're not too busy. Perhaps you can stay.
No, I'd like to very much. Who is it, you know?
This telegram will tell you much more than I can. Arrived an hour ago.
Let's have a look. Be at your lodgings this morning to discuss our problem. Signed AMS. Pretty high-handed message. Be at your lodgings. Oh, please. What do you suppose AMS stands for?
I was just toying with that problem when you arrived.
Could it be the American Medical School?
No, there's no such body. It's the American Medical Association.
Oh, yes.
The imperious tone of the message inclines me to believe that the A stands for amateur.
Very possibly. Amateur Masker Society.
Or the amateur murderers. That would be a nice thought, wouldn't it? As their representative now, no doubt, to save us further guesswork.
Holmes, it looks like the same carriage that I drove in last night. The girl standing on your doorstep, dressed in the height of fashion. Mrs. Hudson's letting her in.
Splendid. It seems that we have not heard the end of your adventure. Go and meet the lady at the top of the stairs, will you, old chap, and save Mrs. Hudson's legs.
Right, you are, Holmes. Thank you, Mrs. Hudson, thank you. All right, come in, madam. Want to come in?
Thank you, Dr. Watson. Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
At your service, madam. Won't you sit down?
I'm Lady Dorothy Brownlee.
It's your voice. You're the lady who fetched me last night, dressed up as a beggar woman.
Yes, I am, Dr. Watson. Forgive me for being so mysterious at the time.
Doubtless you have come to consult me regarding last night's unfortunate accident at the Amateur Mendicant Society.
How did you know what the initials stood for, Mr. Holmes?
Well, after hearing Dr. Watson's story of last night's happenings, the connotation seemed obvious. Am I right?
Perfectly. Last night, when Dr. Watson told us Julian was dead, we thought it was an accident.
And now you think it is murder, eh? Lady Bromley, if you expect my help, there must be no more mystery. Just what is this Amateur Mendicant Society?
I'm afraid it'll be a little hard for you to understand our motives. We're a group of people, rather wealthy people, I suppose, who find pleasure in deliberately leading a seamy life disguised as beggars. We use the basement that you were in last night, Doctor, as our headquarters. We keep our beggars there and change out of them before we go home.
Oh, what a fantastic idea.
What a futile, worthless way of spending your leisure time, Lady Bromley.
I suppose it must seem so, Mr. Holmes. But we're curious to learn how the other half lives. And of course, there's a certain thrill in rubbing shoulders with the police. At least we do some good.
Indeed. I should be interested to learn how.
All the money we make as beggars we give to charity.
Oh, do you really? And you feel that this gesture on your part absolves you from any responsibility to the real beggars whose livelihood you're impairing?
I hadn't thought of it just like that.
No.
Then I suppose you won't want to help us.
Oh, that's quite another matter, madam. As a professional detective, I cannot afford to be a moralist. Yes, I will investigate this case for you, though I warn you my fee will be an extremely high one.
Money isn't important, Mr. Holmes, as long as we can solve Julian's death without bringing the police into the case.
Lady Brownlee, who is the dead man? The man you refer to as Julian?
Julian Trevor, the poet. He was the one who started our society.
Yes, I think I've read some of his work. Decadent. Distinctly decadent.
Well, what makes you think that he was murdered, Lady Brownlee?
Well, after you left last night, Dr. Watson, there was a terrible scene. You remember Sidney Holt?
Oh, was he the big fellow who was so unpleasant to him?
Yes, that's the one.
Oh, do I remember him?
He said that he saw Lord Cecil deliberately trip Julian as he came to the head of the staircase.
Oh, Lord Cecil being...
Lord Cecil Deerenforth, son of the Earl of Meersham.
Oh, yes.
There was a bitter argument. Cecil accused Sidney of doing the same thing. Then they had a dreadful fight. And it ended up with Cecil threatening to go to the police. So that's when we decided to send a telegram to you, Mr. Holmes.
Oh, yes, I see. So the proof of murder depends on such flimsy evidence as to whether the dead man fell or, well, should we say, was pushed?
But it seems like...
Mr. Holmes, even though you don't approve, please help us, won't you?
Yes, Lady Brownlee, I will.
Will you come back with me now to our headquarters?
I shall join you within the hour. In the meantime, my old friend Dr. Watson can go with you.
But Holmes, what can I do without you?
You know my methods, old chap. Act accordingly.
Oh, very well, Mr. Holmes. But you promise you'll be there.
I promise you that I will be there, madam.
Thank you so much, Mr. Holmes. We'll be expecting you. Come on, Doctor.
Well, I'll just get my hat and coat. Holmes, what are you up to?
Go with her and ask no more questions. I shall join you within the hour.
Holmes, there's a glint in your eye. I don't think you believe the story.
Of course I don't, Watson.
Well, then what?
Then go with her, old fellow, and keep your wits about you. The game's afoot.
The story of the Amateur Mendicant Society will continue in just a few seconds. Time I'd like to use to remind you that you're really missing something until you try having wine with your dinner. And I mean a Petri wine. Let's say a Petri California Burgundy or a Petri California Sauterne. Both wines are just made to make good food taste better. If you like a red wine, try Petri Burgundy. Try it with hamburger, with stew, with any meat or meat dish. And if you like a delicious white wine, a wine that'll make chicken taste better than ever, try a well-chilled Petri Sauterne. With food, nothing can take the place of a good Petri wine. And now back to tonight's new Sherlock Holmes adventure. The Amateur Mendicant Society, a group of wealthy eccentrics who pose as beggars, have come to Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson with a problem. One of their members has apparently been murdered, and the famous pair have been asked to investigate the killing. As we rejoin our story, Dr. Watson, still awaiting the arrival of the great detective, is cross-questioning three of the members at the headquarters of this unusual society.
But I don't find your stories very convincing.
Oh, don't you now? Well, then suppose you stop asking questions until Sherlock Holmes gets here. He's the man we've engaged to settle this business, not you. We're paying for his services, not those of his assistant.
Mr. Holmes asked me to conduct this preliminary investigation, my good man. I'm perfectly familiar with his methods, so keep a civil tongue in your head if you want us to continue with this case.
Well, I'm not answering any more questions till he gets here.
Insufferable fellow. Lord Cecil, you say that you saw Holt deliberately trip the dead man as he came down the stairs last night.
Yes, I did.
Well, where were you standing, sir?
At the head of the staircase. Holt was beside me, and as Julian came by, he deliberately...
Excuse me, number 11, excuse me.
What is it?
There is a strange man just come in. He is dressed as you when you work, but I do not remember to have seen him here before. He speaks very rough.
Did he give the correct signal?
Yes, and the password.
He must be a new member.
I suppose we better see him. Bring him in. Oh, bad time for him to come here, confound it.
This way, please.
Tommy, what a nice place you got here. Yeah, what a nice place. Certainly do yourselves proud, don't you?
Who are you, and how did you get in here?
I'll give you a signal and the password just like Julian told me to.
Are you a friend of Julian?
Of course I am. You're coming to meet him here today.
Who are you, really?
Are we all friends here?
Yes, you can talk freely.
Then permit me to introduce myself. I am Don Luis Jose Fernando de las Torres at your service.
Why? Why do you want to join us?
When Julian told me about it, it tickled my, my funny bone. It is a so charming idea to see those of mendicancy.
I suppose he's all right.
Of course I'm all right. Now, where is Julian, please? He will vouch for me.
He's in the other room. He had an accident.
An accident? Not a bad one, I hope?
A very bad one. Dr. Watson, you better take him in there and break the news to him.
Very well. Follow me, sir.
This is terrible. Please, tell me what happened, Doctor.
I'm afraid you must prepare yourself for a shock, sir. Your friend is dead. His neck was broken last night in some brawl.
Yes, except that I do believe it was an accident, Watson.
Holmes!
Quiet.
But not quietly enough, Mr. Sherlock Holmes. Come on, come back to the others and let all take a look at you. Come on, get moving, both of you. This isn't a pop gun in my hands.
Sorry, Holmes, I gave the whole thing away.
That's all right, old chap.
Oh, Cecil, Dorothy, come here. I want you to take a look at the great Sherlock Holmes. Walked into our trap just like any stupid policeman. I know why you had to dress up to do it, though, Mr. Holmes. We were waiting for you here anyway, you know.
Oh, I was well aware of that, Mr. Holt. You see, I knew I was walking into a trap.
How did you know that, Mr. Holmes?
Lady Brownlee, the story you brought to us today was so obviously a false one. just as there is no amateur mendicant society.
Who are they, Holmes?
Go ahead, Mr. Holmes. Tell him. Let's see how much you really do know.
Yes, go ahead.
Why should I tell you what you already know?
Go on, talk if you know what's good for you.
Oh, you're so persuasive, aren't you, Mr. Holt? Very well. Undoubtedly, Julian Trevor's death last night was an accident. You fetched a doctor, Lady Brownlee, a very natural move, and later discovered that the doctor in question was the old friend of Sherlock Holmes. You were all afraid that I would become interested in your unusual society, and so you invented that very thin story about the accident being a murder. You wanted to lure me here so that I could be disposed of, and you could all continue your nefarious works without hindrance.
Well, now aren't we clever? What is our nefarious work, may I ask?
Your password gave me a clue to the lanterns. Prior to the French revolutionists. They strung the aristocrats up on the lampposts. Then again, the combination of curious costumes and a luxurious establishment in a low-class area posed another question. What political belief provides a common meeting ground for misguided aristocrats and dangerous commoners?
And how did you answer that question?
Oh, very simple, my dear sir. One word. Nihilism. Its doctrine of assassination and overthrow of government would find every chance of being put into practice by all of you at the forthcoming Jubilee celebrations to be held here in London. And also would account for your beggar's clothes. A beggar would have greater freedom of movement in a crowd than an ordinary person.
You're a clever man, Mr. Holmes. Too bad you'll have to die. I'll get the rope.
What are you going to do with him?
Do? Give him a first-hand taste of nihilism, of course. They can't live. They know too much.
You can't possibly do this, you know. The police will track us here.
By the time the police get here, you and your friend Holmes will be blown to kingdom come. Oh, right. Hands together, Mr. Holmes. That's it.
Ah! Oh, mind that bandaged wrist of mine, will you? It's confoundedly sore.
Oh, isn't that a shame now? Is this any better? Ooh. Tie up the doctor, Cecil, while I bind Holmes's legs.
With pleasure.
I can't go through with this.
What do you mean, Dorothy? You can't go through with it.
I just can't stand by and see two innocent men murdered.
Don't be a fool, Dorothy. We can't let them live. They know too much.
I don't care. If you go on with this, I'm going out for the police.
You fool. Tie her up as well, Cecil.
Leave me alone.
Sit down there beside him. Go on.
You're a devil.
Oh, shut up. Now, Mr. Holmes, I'm going to fetch a little invention. A little invention I'm sure you'll be interested in.
Mr. Holmes, it's a pity you and your friend didn't learn to mind your own business.
I'm afraid it's too late to teach an old dog new tricks.
It's too late now, at any rate. Quite comfortable, Dr. Watson?
Don't you speak to me, sir. You're a filthy traitor to your country.
Rubbish.
Here we are. Example of Mikhail Petrov's mechanical genius. This bomb will blow the entire building sky high, and the three of you with it. Now, I wind the time clock so, and we'll set the fuse to go off in 5 minutes. It'll give us plenty of time to get away. So.
Come on, Sidney, let's get out of here.
Right. Charming picture. Three of you bound hand and foot sitting beside each other on the sofa. Well, ta-da, Dorothy. Think of our cause during the 5 minutes. And as for you, Mr. Holmes, and your friend, good riddance to bad rubbish.
Well, Holmes, this looks like the end.
Afraid so, old chap.
I blame myself. If I hadn't been so infernally noisy when I recognized you, we wouldn't be in this mess.
Wasn't your fault, old fellow. I think they suspected me anyway.
Well, I must say it seemed to me that you told them a great deal more than was necessary about your suspicions. Surely you could pretended ignorance.
Oh, I suppose I could have done.
I can't die yet. I'm not ready to
Courage,
die.
Lady Brownlee, courage. And by the way, was I right in assuming that your associates are nihilists?
Of course they are. They're planning to assassinate the Prime Minister during the Jubilee celebration.
Prime Minister, great heavens, Holmes, we've got to get free.
Assuming some miracle happened, we did get free, and your former associates were arraigned in court. Would you testify against them?
Oh, of course I would. But what chance is there of that? That devilish carbide doesn't stop
If it bothers you that much, Lady Brownlee, I'll stop it for you.
Holmes, your hands are free.
Of course they are, my dear fellow. Bandaged wrist I mentioned just now concealed a razor-edged blade. I cut through the ropes almost before our friends had left the room.
Then why did you keep us in the suspense, Mr. Holmes?
I wanted to be quite sure that you'd testify in the forthcoming trial, madam. There we are. That renders the bar harmless. Ah! And that means that the police have sprung the trap that I set for your associates, Lady Brownlee. It's lucky for you that you had a change of heart and prevented you from leaving us.
Oh, Mr. Holmes, how can I ever thank you?
Holmes, you had the place surrounded with police when you came in here.
Of course I did, my dear fellow. Here, undo your ropes.
No wonder you were so calm. No wonder you told them so much. You wanted them to show their hands.
Precisely, old fellow. And they obliged me most satisfactorily. They attempted our triple murder. They are self-confessed anarchists. And with the evidence of Lady Brownlee, I'm sure that we can put them where they all belong. Considering it barely noon, I think you'll agree, Watson, that is a very comprehensive morning's work.
Doctor, tell the truth. Were you scared waiting for that time bomb to go off?
Scared, my boy? I was so scared that to this day I can't stand being in the same room with a loud ticking clock. Each tick of the clock seems to speak to me. Seems to say, tick-tock, this is the end. Tick-tock, this is the end. Did the clock ever speak to you like that?
Well, yes, Doctor. How did you know?
What's the clock say to you?
Tick-tock. Petri took time to bring you good wine. Petri took time to bring you good wine.
Gracious me, Mr. Foreman.
You listen to your clock and I'll listen to mine. Gosh, Doctor, can I help it if I like to hear about Petri wine? After all, that Petri family really knows how to make good wine. And it's no wonder. They've been making wine ever since they started the Petri business generations ago, way back in the 1800s. And because the making of Petri wine is a family affair, well, they've been able to hand on down from father to son, the skill and experience of each preceding generation. So naturally, when it comes to turning luscious, sun-ripened grapes into fragrant, delicious wine, well, you just can't beat the Petri family, because Petri took time to bring you good wine. And say, don't forget to take time to send for your Petri recipe calendar. It's free. Just write to Petri Wine, P-E-T-R-I, Petri Wine, San Francisco 26, California. San Francisco 26, California. This offer is intended to apply only in those states and other localities where its acceptance is permissible by law and regulation. And now, Dr. Watson, what adventure are you planning to tell us next week?
Well, next week, Mr. Foreman, I'm going to tell you a story of old Vienna. The Vienna of sparkling lights, beautiful women, and lilting music. And of an extraordinary murder that takes place to the accompaniment of a Mozart sonata.
Boy, that sounds like a thriller. I'll see you for sure next week.
Just a minute. Before I go, Mr. Foreman, I want to urge every registered nurse listening in to get all the facts about the Army Nurse Corps. The Army needs you, nurses, needs you desperately. They'll make you an officer at once and give you every chance to further your post-war careers. So if you're a registered nurse under 45, call at your local Red Cross chapter and get all the details. Or wire collect to the Surgeon General, U.S. Army, Washington, D.C. And if you can't qualify for the Nurses Corps, see if you can't get into essential civilian nursing so that you can release a nurse who does qualify. But do something about it first thing tomorrow, won't you?
Tonight's Sherlock Holmes adventure is written by Dennis Green and Anthony Boucher and is based on an incident in the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle story, The 5 Orange Pips. Mr. Rathbone appears through the courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and Mr. Bruce through the courtesy of Universal Pictures, where they are now starring in the Sherlock Holmes series. The Petri Wine Company of San Francisco, California, invites you to tune in again next week, same time, same station. Meanwhile, don't forget to take advantage of our offer of a free recipe calendar.
Oh, the Petri family took the time to bring you such good wine. So when you eat and when you cook, remember Petri wine.
To make good food taste better, remember
Petri wine.
This is Bill Foreman saying goodnight for the Petri family. Sherlock Holmes comes to you from our Hollywood studios. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.
This episode from the life of Sherlock Holmes will be transmitted to our men and women overseas by shortwave and through the worldwide facilities of the Armed Forces Radio Service. Petri Wine brings you Basil Rathbone and Nigel Bruce in the new adventures of Sherlock Holmes. The Petrie family, the family that took time to bring you good wine, invite you to listen to Dr. Watson tell about another exciting adventure he shared with his old friend, that master detective Sherlock Holmes. And say, I want to ask you if you've sent in for that little present we've got for you. You know, that swell recipe calendar? It's free, of course, and it's really something. It's a 2-year calendar for 1945 and 46, and it's beautifully done in full color. But the best part of it is that it's jammed with recipes and ideas for cooking with Petrie wine. Send for your free recipe calendar tonight. Just send your name and address to Petrie Wine, Petri, Petrie Wine, San Francisco 26, California. San Francisco 26, California. The requests for this swell calendar have been coming in so fast that you better hurry up and get yours before we get snowed under. Write tonight, and we'll send you your free recipe calendar at once. And now for our weekly visit with the good Dr. Watson. Let's see if he's waiting for us.
Good evening, Mr. Fogg.
Oh, good evening, Doctor. Playing the phonograph, I see.
Yes, my boy. And that particular melody has some very potent memories for me. Here, I'll turn the thing on. You haven't come here to listen to a Mozart sonata. You want a story, don't you, young fellow, my lad?
That's right, Doctor.
Well, let's sit down.
All right.
That's better. Now I'll tell you what.
Oh, thank you, Doctor.
It began in Vienna in 1889, many, many years before the insane house painter named Schicklgruber had converted that gay city into a place of fear and oppression.
And what were you and Sherlock Holmes doing there, Doctor? Just taking a trip?
Mr. Foreman, in those early days of our association, we didn't have the time or the money for just taking trips. No. We were in Vienna because Holmes had been engaged in certain highly important investigations. We were staying in a charming little pension inhabited by students and musicians. And on the night the story began, we'd finished dinner and had returned to our room. I was busy making some notes on the investigation we'd just concluded, and Holmes was scraping away at his beloved violin.
Confound it. What's wrong? Why can't I get it?
Oh, it sounds very pretty to me.
Pretty, really, old chap. I'm an amateur. A heavy-fingered one at that. Listen to this. Oh, sounds like a fiddler at an Irish wake.
Oh, take it easy, Holmes. Take it easy. There's no need to fling the violin down like that.
What's an old chap? Why, with all your other excellent qualities, are you not a pianist?
What's the piano got to do with it?
In this case, everything. There's a piano in this room, and if you could play it, the Mozart sonata I'm struggling with might have some meaning. Come in. Oh, good evening, Fräulein. Wish to see me?
You are Herr Sherlock Holmes.
That is my name.
Then, I wish to see you. I'm Leo Uhlenstein. I live here in this pension.
How do you do? This is my friend, Dr. Watson.
How do you do, Herr Doctor?
Very glad to meet you, my dear lady.
Fräulein Uhlenstein, may I pay my tribute to the brilliance of your piano playing? You have the exact precision of phrasing that Mozart demands.
How do you know of me?
Both Dr. Watson and I were present at the command performance you gave at the Imperial Court a fortnight ago.
Hey, curious, I knew I'd seen you somewhere before. My friend was just expressing the need of a pianist as you walked in, young lady. Perhaps
I'm sorry. I do not play with amateurs.
Amateurs? Well, really?
I do not mean to be rude. It's just that my life is dedicated to my professional career.
I quite understand, Fräulein. And now please tell me, what can I do to help you? I must presume you have come to see me in my professional capacity.
Jawohl. That is correct, Herr Holmes. Though I realize to a great detective like you, my problem must seem quite trivial. I'm being blackmailed by a man in this pension. He is Sándor Árpády, a Hungarian painter who lives in the studio upstairs.
Sándor Árpády. Yes, I think I've heard of him.
Since 2 months now, ever since he know my secret, he's come to me for money, and today he tell me he must have 250 gulden, or he will go to the police. I have not that much money. Herr Holmes, please to tell me what I shall do.
Just what hold does he have over you?
My brother, Karl, he got into some trouble here, and the police were looking for him, but he ran away to München. as you say, Munich, and Sander R. Party knew of this. He was a friend of mine, so I thought. When this trouble came on my brother, I turned to Shandor for help. He smuggled Carl out of the country, and he turned on me for blackmail. He's a bad man. I wish he was dead.
Most blackmailers are cowards at heart. I think Dr. Watson and I will call on the gentleman. By the way, does he have any written evidence of your brother's crime?
Yeah, he has his address in Munich. I show Shandor a letter from him when he first go there, and keep the letter, will not give it back to me.
And if he gave the police your brother's address, they'd arrest him, eh?
They would, of course.
Yes, of course.
Herr Holmes, will you please to tell me what I should do? I cannot go on this way. My music
now,
is...
Now, Fräulein,
suffering.
calm yourself. I shall be most happy to help you, and if you will lead the way, we'll see how persuasive we can be with Shandor Apadi.
That is the studio, Herr Holmes, at the end of the corridor.
I see. Now, remember, young lady, you'd better let me do most of the talking.
He must be out.
That is possible.
Ah, locked. I think, bearing in mind our party's profession, we'll take the liberty of opening his door.
That doesn't look a very complicated lock to me.
Oh, I think this skeleton key will do the trick.
It's very dangerous, Herr Holmes, if Shandor finds you doing...
No. Don't you worry about that, Fräulein. We're perfectly capable of taking care of ourselves.
Ah, there we are. Close the door behind you, will you, Watson?
Can't see a thing. I'll strike a match.
Oh, Gottenhimmel.
Great Scott, look at him. Slumped over his desk.
Light the gas, will you, Watson?
Right you are, Holmes. There.
Judging from his appearance, Fräulein Ullenstein, I think Sandor Apadi had other enemies besides yourself. Less scrupulous enemies.
He's been strangled. Look at the finger marks on his throat.
Is he...
Yes. His body is still warm, though. I'm afraid he's dead.
I am glad. He was a bad man. Deserved to die.
Watson, do you notice that the fingers of the killer have broken the skin and drawn blood?
Oh, yes, so they have.
Should we not communicate with the police?
Before we do that, Fräulein, we must see if we can find your brother's letter. Help me move the body, will you, Watson? Lying across an open dispatch box that might contain the document in question.
Right, John.
Come on, my fellow. That's it. For a painter, the late Mr. Apadi was an unusually methodical man. Everything filed here in alphabetical order. Here we are. You, Fräulein Leah Ullenstein. And the letter has the Munich postmark. I think this must be the document in question. Will you examine it, please, Fräulein?
Yeah, this is the letter. Herr Holmes, how can I thank you?
There's very little to thank me for. If the blackmailer were still alive, I fear it wouldn't have been so simple a matter. I wonder what other treasures this box contains. Hello?
What is it, Holmes?
Interesting. Extremely interesting. Look at this, old fellow.
Good Lord. Information on the case that we've just been working on.
Exactly, and from the names attached to the document, I think we may assume that the dead man did not confine his blackmailing to struggling young pianists. He was after big game, too.
Yes, we'd better be careful, Holmes. I don't think that we should go for the police just yet.
No. We'll start by having a little talk with the other residents of this pension. Fräulein, who lives in the room adjoining this one?
I too, Herr Holmes.
And the room across the landing?
Lai Tong-fo, the great Chinese actor. He's performing here in Vienna.
I see. Then I think we'll start by calling on him. Return to your room, Fräulein, and we will let you know later what we've found. In the meantime, say nothing to anyone of what has happened.
I will do everything you tell me, Herr Holmes, and please, once again, please let me thank you for what you've done for me.
You know, Holmes, I'm not sure that girl didn't strangle Apadi herself. A pianist would have unusual strength in her fingers, and we know that she had the motive. And look how unnaturally calm she was when she realized the man was dead.
I disagree with you, old fellow.
Huh?
I think what you refer to as unnatural calmness is really the cold detachment of the true artist.
Well, I have a feeling that we should keep an eye on her, just the same.
We will, Watson, we will. And now I suggest we pay a visit across the landing to the distinguished Chinese actor, Mr. Ling Tu-fo.
Yes, please? You wish to see me?
If you could spare us a moment, sir.
But of course, gentlemen. Please to come in.
My name is Sherlock Holmes. This is my colleague, Dr. Watson.
How do you do, sir? How do you do?
I am greatly flattered to meet you. You are not here to see me in your professional capacity, I hope, Mr. Holmes?
Oh, no, not exactly. I just wanted to ask you a few questions.
Please, to ask me anything.
Do you know Shandora Paddy, the painter who lives across the hall?
I know him by sight. We nod to each other on the stairs. Nothing more.
I see. Have you been in your room most of the evening, may I ask?
But yes, I have been sitting here quietly for the past few hours, reading over the Analects of Confucius.
No, Confucius. May I ask, sir, whether you've heard any unusual noises this evening? Sounds of a struggle or a cry from the direction of Sandor Pardi's room, for instance?
I do not think so. Wait, yes. I think I did hear laced voices in there and the sound of a cry.
About how long ago was this?
Oh, an hour ago, perhaps more. Is anything wrong? Has trouble come to Shandor?
Shandor? I thought you said you had only a nodding acquaintance with the gentleman.
Well, he is a well-known artist. It is only natural I should call him by his first name, Mr. Holmes, even though I do not know him. Has something happened to him?
I'm afraid so, but I can't tell you any more about it at the moment. Thank you for your cooperation. We shall see you again, no doubt. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. That fellow wasn't telling us the truth, you know, Holmes. He seemed very shifty to me. Oh, where are we going now?
Downstairs to the porter's desk. There's only one entrance to this house, you'll remember. The porter may be able to tell us of any unusual comings and goings in the last hour or two. Come on, old chap, don't dawdle. There's a great deal of work ahead of us.
Herr Holmes, what can I do for you?
How long have you been on duty tonight?
Since 5 o'clock.
Did you notice what people have come in or gone out since then?
No one has gone out.
Ah, splendid. And who came in?
Fräulein Ullenstein came in just after 6, and Herr Apperdy, the painter, came in a few minutes later. That is all.
Who lives in the other ground floor apartments besides Dr. Watson and myself?
There are only 2 other apartments. In the one to the right of the corridor lives Madame Janssen. She's a Swedish lady, a sculptress.
And in the other?
Signora Violetti, the Italian opera singer.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm much obliged to you.
I'm happy to be of service, Herr Holmes.
Where are we off to now? Back to our rooms?
Oh, we'll call on Madame Violetti if she's at home.
It sounds as if she's very much at home.
Sherlock Holmes, that is a friend have come to see me. Bravo! Bravissimo! I have so much wish to make your acquaintance. Sit down.
No, I'm afraid we can only stay for a moment, madam. My friend wanted to ask you a few questions.
Yes, Signora. I just wanted to know...
I know your questions. Oh. You play the violin. I have heard you.
Yes.
You want to know whether the great Valeria will allow you to accompany her in a magnificent soprano aria, allo so from Mozart's Il Flauto Magico. Your latest answer to your question is si.
Yes, madam. Forgive me, Signora, but if you don't mind. But that was not one of my questions.
It was not? But I will sing it with you just the same.
You flatter me, but at the moment there are other things on my mind. Signora Violetti, do you know Shandora Paddy?
By his side. That is all. He make eyes at me, but I no pay attention. I do not like ungallants.
You haven't seen him this evening?
No. I've been alone, reviewing the score at La Traviata. Sempre libera di Dio, di gioia, I am to sing it next week here in Vienna. I hope you will both be present. It would be a great treat for you.
I'm sure it would be, Signora. Now, if you'll excuse us.
Oh, it is sad you must go so soon. But come and see me again, and I will sing for you both before you leave Vienna.
Great Scott, what a ghastly woman. She's not your murderess, I'm sure. And now I suppose we'll have to question this sculptress woman. And then we'll talk to everyone in the house.
No, I think before we visit her, we'll examine the dead man's room a little more closely. That black tin dispatch box may hold the key to this mystery. Holmes tell? Why didn't I go through these papers thoroughly at first?
Yes, they certainly tell an interesting story. Our party had obviously been blackmailing Madame Janssen, the sculptor.
Yes, and also our friend, the Chinese actor, Lai Tung-fo.
Then Lai Tung-fo was lying when he said that he didn't know our party.
Obviously.
By George, 3 of the 4 people living in this house in his power.
Hello.
What's the matter? What have you found?
Footprints in the cigar ash on the carpet. Prints of a small foot. Leading us to this closet.
Somebody must have been hiding in there.
Yes, very possibly. Uh-huh. Take a look at these, Watson.
Strands of hair. Long black hair. Where were they?
On a hook in the cupboard. Someone bracing themselves back so as to be out of sight could easily leave such evidence.
I've got it, Holmes. I've got it. The long black hair, the long nails that caused the peculiar marks on our party's throat, and the small footprint. It was a woman.
Possibly, but which one? Fräulein Ullenstein and Signora Violette both have blonde hair, remember?
And it must be that sculptress woman.
Not necessarily. Who else, not a woman, might have small feet, long nails, and long black hair?
By Jove, the Chinese actress.
Precisely. Come on.
I hope he's still there.
Come on, sir. Come on. Let's go in.
Holmes, look at him. He's praying. His head's in his hand.
No, my dear fellow, I'm afraid prayers can do him no good now. He's been strangled. Strangled with his own cue.
Dr. Watson's story will continue in just a second. So I'm going to take that second for a fast question. I know you've probably tasted port wine, but have you ever tasted Petri California port? Have you? Because if you haven't tried Petri port, well, you can just tell yourself right now you don't know how good a port can be. Petri port is rich, red, and hearty. But what you want to know is, how does it taste? The answer to that is short and sweet. The taste is terrific. And say, Petri California Muscatel is on the terrific side, too. Petri Muscatel has the flavor and fragrance of real, juicy Muscat grapes. Mm-hmm. Both wines are perfect after dinner or any time you're sitting around talking with your friends. Try them. They're great. They've got to be, because they're Petri. And now, back to tonight's new Sherlock Holmes adventure. The famous pair are staying in Vienna, where they've become involved in the mysterious strangling of a notorious blackmailer. As we rejoin our story, Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson are cross-questioning another of the suspects, a Swedish sculptress by the name of Madame Janssen.
What do you want with me? Why have you come in here?
Well, we just wanted to ask you a few questions, madam.
To admire your figurines, may I ask if you always work in clay?
Yeah, but what's that to you? Do you wish to buy some of my sculpture?
No, but I assure you the question was pertinent.
Tell me who you are and stop wasting my time.
My friend is a private detective, madam.
A detective? Who sent you here?
No one sent me here. I'm conducting an investigation of the murder of Shandor Paddy.
Shandor dead?
Mm-hmm.
Good. I'm glad.
Yes, madam, but we happen to know that you had a motive for killing him. He'd been blackmailing you.
Get out of here. What right have you to come here and question me?
No. Look here, madam. If you know what's good for you, you will answer our question.
And if you know what's good for you, you'll get out of here, both of you.
Come along, Watson.
But, Holmes, you can't possibly...
Forgive me, madam, for our intrusion. We meant no rudeness.
You have been rude. Intolerably rude. Go away.
Whatever made you back down like that, Holmes? Obviously, she's the killer.
Rubbish.
But her hair was jet black.
Yes, but it was short hair. And didn't you notice the size of her feet? Anyway, she works in clay. If it had been marble, I might have suspected her.
Upon my soul, Holmes, I wish you'd tell me what you're driving at.
I've the answer to these killings now, Watson. But I'll have to prove it. I'm afraid I must work without you, old chap. Do you mind waiting for me in our room? No. Wait a minute. That may be dangerous. Wait for me in Signora Violette's room, if you don't mind. I'll join you there as soon as my work is done. Pretend that you have returned because you were so enchanted with her voice.
Well, great Scott, Holmes, you can't ask me to be alone with that dreadful woman.
Please do as I say, Watson, and don't question me. There isn't a moment to be lost.
don't know that aria, my dear doctor.
No, madam, I'm afraid I don't.
You've not heard about great Giuseppe Verdi?
Well, yes, I heard of him, of course, but I can't identify his work.
That was from a Rigoletto, you silly man.
Rigoletto?
Come, tell me your favorite composer. I will sing something of his just for you. I will turn the gas light down.
No, turn the gas light down.
That will be so much more romantic.
Gracious me.
Now, who is your favorite composer?
Oh, I don't know that I have any favorite. What's his name? Wagner's very fine, you know.
Wagner is a heavy like most German composers. But the Violatti can master him.
Oh, Lord, here she goes again.
Come in. I cannot see who it is. Come into the light.
It is I.
Great heavens, the Chinese actor.
I am sorry to make commotion, but as we say in my country, those who return from grave speak with double knowledge.
Oh, you devil! You devil! I kill you once! I kill you once! I kill you again!
Thank you for the confession, Senora Violetti. You can testify to it, Watson.
Holmes!
No, you don't, Senora. Your nails are too sharp for my liking.
I'll kill you two, both of you! I'll kill you!
Watson, catch her!
She's fainted, Holmes.
Fainted, eh? What an undramatic exit for a most dramatic lady.
Well, Holmes, now that you've turned Signora Violetti over to the police, perhaps you'd tell me what made you certain that she was the murderess.
It was obvious from the beginning that Apari was strangled by someone with long fingernails. When Lai Tung Fo was killed, it ruled him out. Then who was the woman with a motive and long nails?
Best of all, no.
Elementary, my dear fellow. Was the woman Fräulein Ullenstein? No. Being a concert pianist, her nails were naturally short. The sculptress who worked in clay? Again, no. That would make it impossible for her to mold her delicate figurines. Therefore, Signora Violetti, by the process of elimination, was the only woman with long nails.
But why did she strangle the Chinese actor, too?
Undoubtedly, he witnessed the first killing. The long black hairs in the closet were from his cue. I presume that later he threatened Signora Violetti, and so he himself was strangled.
I still don't understand why she strangled Apardi in the first place.
Dr. Watson, well, I think you'll find that he's been blackmailing her, too. Remember, he had documents incriminating everyone in the house except her. I think we may assume she killed him and then removed her own papers from the dispatch box. But I'd no proof, and so, well, I had to frighten her into confession.
So that's why you disguised yourself as Lai Tung Fu.
Yes, I borrowed the robes from his room. It was lucky that the lights were low as I entered. Yes. And it's also fortunate that to the average European, all Chinese look alike. Come in. Ah, Fräulein Ullenstein. We'll be coming in to see you in a few minutes.
I've been waiting so anxiously. Is everything all right?
Well, from your point of view, my dear young lady, yes.
There's nothing more for you to worry about.
Oh, I would like to repay you, Herr Holmes.
I've done very little for you, but if you really feel that you owe me something...
Yeah?
Well, perhaps just this once you wouldn't mind accompanying an amateur?
It would be a pleasure. What is it you wish me to play?
A Mozart sonata.
But of course. The rondo from the E-flat, I suppose.
That's splendid. Please, Fräulein.
You like Mozart, Herr Doctor?
Oh, very much, young lady, very much. In fact, I might say he is my favorite composer. Charming. Perfectly charming. I only wish that all our adventures could end so melodiously.
Tonight's Sherlock Holmes adventure is written by Dennis Green and Anthony Boucher and is based on an incident in the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle story, A Case of Identity. Mr. Rathbone appears to the courtesy of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer and Mr. Bruce to the courtesy of Universal Pictures, where they are now starring in the Sherlock Holmes series. This is Bill Foreman saying goodnight for the Petrie family. This is the Mutual Broadcasting System.